Okay, hello everybody. My name is Anson Wong, and today I will be presenting on video game monetization. So first off, who am I? I am from the Bay Area. I like video games, board games, trivia games, and then also some humanities on the side. And my mentor is E.C. Kennedy. So this is my table of contents. If you look on the right, some terms that people may not be familiar with, I will have defined. We have overview, free to play, and pay to play. So in 2022, the global video game market revenue is $300 billion. And this is according to Statista. And I really want to highlight how independent publishers versus major publishers, big companies, how independent publishers have a chance of becoming super successful. So if you look on this graph right here, according to my research, an indie game made $8 million. It sold 8 million units in 6 days, as opposed to a major publisher who sold only 5 million units over 11 days. So I kind of was super impressed by this accessibility of this industry, because normally other industries don't have such accessible, just independent ways of becoming successful. But the video game market is, and I wanted to kind of highlight it. So first off, we're going to free-to-play monetization. So the main way free-to-play games make money is through microtransactions. And sure, it's free, but games can be predatory. They are constantly thinking, how do I get my players money? So how do you get money? First off, you could do pay to progress, where games have kind of currency to progress gameplay. And it's very common in player versus player games. And some innovations on currency is limited time sales, which induce fear of missing out or FOMO, and daily calendars, where purchases give you an incremental amount of in-game currency that progresses your gameplay over time. You're not getting, the calendar gives you it over a set amount of days. And then the second sub point for progressing gameplay is gambling. You might have heard of gacha games, and these games are kind of slot machines where they release new characters monthly, and players can pay to get those characters. Sometimes failed attempts are mitigated, and it's a really interesting way that the video game monetization has kind of used gambling from casinos and implemented it into the industry. And then second of all, there's cosmetics, where kind of think of it as quality equals price. So the higher the quality of the cosmetics, the higher the price. And players really like paying for cosmetics because of its customization. And they can really make their video game account unique. One innovation on cosmetic monetization is collaborations. So if you've heard of Fortnite, they like to collaborate with a lot of popular culture, like video games, other video games, or other maybe animations. And that way their players can buy special cosmetics, which allows them to have such great revenue. But there has been controversy for free-to-play games. When you pay to progress, some games have kind of a pay-to-win controversy, where players who do pay for games that are free-to-play get such a huge advantage over players who don't pay that it kind of equates to paying to win. And there has also been legal issues. For example, Fortnite was sued for $200 million for employing deceptive in-game interfaces related to currency and how it made it too easy to buy currency. So that's kind of a danger. There's also the Battle Pass, which is very popular in player versus player games. Think of it as a themed reward track where over the season you constantly get rewards. And these rewards are usually better value than just outright paying for those rewards. So if you can see that you could get a character skin if you pay $10 and also unlock a huge amount of rewards. So there are pros and cons for the Battle Pass, which I think is a very notable emerging form of monetization. So for the players, the rewards on the Battle Pass are reliable. You know what you can get. And for developers, it provides a way to get periodic income. If your game is free to play, you kind of want to have some sort of insurance where you're guaranteed to get money every season, every time you release a Battle Pass. But for the cons, some players need to complete quests. If you see on the right, you might have to win 5 battles to unlock the full value of your purchase. Some people might not like that. Some people want to just pay and get everything up front. And for developers, game developers, one of the cons is the energy spent producing a Battle Pass worth it? Because the Battle Pass is not any new game feature or any new characters. So if you're spending energy producing a Battle Pass, that's not bettering your game in terms of gameplay. So we're moving on to pay-to-play, which is the original model for games. And pay-to-play is very good for games with high development costs up front. If you think of story games where you play and you experience a story, they're often pay-to-play because they have a high development cost. For example, Super Smash Bros. Is a one experience game where you unlock everything up front. You have to spend a lot of money producing the characters in Super Smash Bros. So the developers of it wanted to use the pay-to-play model because it has such a high development cost. And Baldur's Gate 3 and Minecraft are good examples of a high development cost upfront. Pay-to-play is easier to implement in the video game industry. So after the purchase, how do you get it? Get money. So you could have sequels or DLCs. If you think of it as buying a video game, a pay-to-play video game, as a cup of coffee, a sequel would be another cup of coffee, and a DLC would be some whipped cream on top of that coffee. So sequels are a way to capitalize off a previous game's success, and it usually maintains its successful counterparts aspects. Like Hades 2, you're playing as the daughter of the original Hades, and that's an upcoming sequel, which I think is a good example. And then for DLCs, I mentioned the whipped cream on the coffee. It's kind of an add-on. You can't really buy it individually as a product, but players like buying downloadable content, DLCs, because it gives the same core gameplay concept, but you don't have to buy a whole different game. For example, another Hades 2. And then there's also subscriptions. There are 2 forms of this. One is gaming library, where you pay periodically to access a library of games. Think of it as a Netflix for gaming. And then second of all, there's games as a subscription service, where it was popularized by World of Warcraft, and you pay periodically to access a game. Think of it as a gaming Costco. So we reach my conclusion. Free-to-play games, they have a very innovative landscape, and pay-to-play games, you can capitalize off of previous success by using sequels and DLCs. And the ultimate goal of my presentation is to erase the stigma that the gaming industry isn't pragmatic and how video game business practices they connect to real world business practices. Thank you.
It's very, very interesting. As a sort of casual video game player, it's always interesting to understand the different business models. Um, I just wanted to make a note that I loved the analogy of the DLCs with the coffee and the whipped cream. That was perfect. So now every time I see DLC, I'm going to imagine like a cup of coffee with whipped cream. So really, really appreciate the analogy there. I have a couple questions, but it looks like we have. Here's a good question from one of the attendees. If you designed your own game, how would you monetize it?
That's a really good question. It depends. Uh, in general, I like playing free to play games because they're accessible as a player, but usually when people start off by making their first video game, they make it pay to play since it has such a high development cost. So I think if you're coming from a practical standpoint, I would be kind of forced to employ pay to play since it gives me such immediate value as opposed to free to play where you kind of have to work to get the money.
Um, One of my questions was, how do the different monetization models impact player engagement and satisfaction in various game genres? Because you mentioned the controversy and the player experience can be impacted pretty significantly.
So I didn't get a chance to include more research than I already had because it would go over time, but
Sure.
free to play games are just inherently more popular because of the first word free, and many players are often inclined to engage with the monetization methods more. So even though I'm highlighting controversies in free-to-play game genre, it's still more popular as a whole because it's easier to access. But people who like pay-to-play, they buy it because they know they're going to get quality as opposed to free-to-play, where sometimes games are made to get your money and that's it.
Yeah. And this is sort of my follow-up question to that. Because of the controversy with some of the different monetization techniques, do you get a sense that users, video game players, have monetization fatigue, that they're sort of on the lookout for those games where, they're just sort of, I have to pay to win, that sort of thing?
Yeah, so definitely. I tried to aim to include different innovations on each of the methods of free to play, where if you're fatigued by just constant low quality cosmetics, you have collaborations where you can collaborate with, I don't know, animes or sports brands where there's already a sort of familiarity. So it's kind of a new thing saying, hey, my video game has SpongeBob in it, and that's a way to combat fatigue. Also, there's gacha games where new characters are monthly, so you can kind of skip a character if you don't like it a month, and you could pay for the next one or something. Did I answer your question for that?
Yeah, no, no, and I think your what I'm hearing about sort of your part of your thesis is that the different monetization models, they're not there's just they're different models, and it's not necessarily bad if you're sort of paying to win and that sort of thing. I know, as someone who, again, very casual video game player, I do, hear articles or stories about how some people stop playing video games because they feel like they have to keep paying money to win the game, which is sort of, for some folks, is sort of the antithesis of, I just want to pay my money for the $60 for the game and then I have everything. So very, very interesting stuff.